Story 1. When you are a small child, you cannot imagine ever being on your own. The thought of being away from mom and dad is terrifying. As time passes and you grow up, leaving home becomes a desirable thing because it is time. When a woman becomes pregnant, she thinks of birth with trepidation. It is scary. But at 40 weeks, she would happily consent to a cesarean section performed with a dull butter knife in the center ring of the circus, because it is time. When you are young, dying seems scary. You have hope and dreams. You live your life and you have your joys and sorrows. As the places you knew change, when the people you have loved have gone, the thought of dying is not scary anymore. Feels like going home. Story 2. Epicurus said it best on why we should not let death concern us. Death is nothing to us. When we exist, death is not. And when death exists, we are not. Story 3. The older you get, you realize death can be a blessing. There are a lot of different kinds of suffering in the world, especially as you age and develop illnesses. Death is only a tragedy for the young. Story 4. The older I get, the more I realize how much I will not miss this world after I die. Whether I wake up somewhere else or I wake up nowhere else, it's all the same to me. It's hard to explain. It's not like you have a death wish, at least I don't. It's just you get tired. You watch your parents die, and that wears you down and gives you a different perspective on living. And then your friends and other people you know start dying, and you want to congratulate them on the ease of their escape. You still love your kids and other loved ones, but the things that matter to you gradually stop mattering. It's not like you get depressed. Like I said, it's hard to explain. Also, the older I get, the more tired I get, physically and emotionally. I don't want to argue with anyone. I don't want to fight. I just want peace. So maybe death is the ultimate peace. If someone had tried to explain this to me when I was 20 to 50, I would have looked at them like they were crazy. So if you're young, you're not going to understand. But if you're older, I think you probably will. I'm 65. I'm really ready to go. So it doesn't matter to me anymore when I go. Story 5. Most of us get a long time to come to terms with it. Some cope with belief in an afterlife. Some just try to make their time in this world as good as possible, in whatever way that means to them. Eventually, there may come a time when nobody needs you anymore. Your kids are grown, the rest of your family, and maybe most of your friends are gone. Your body is failing you, and things hurt all the time. And death doesn't seem so bad. That's not the same as wanting to die, just accepting that you will eventually and that it's okay. Eventually, you come to realize there are things worse than death. Losing your ability to do things that were important to you, diseases that make you forget things or unable to think clearly, and constant suffering from injuries. Story 6. One day, you come to a point where you have already done everything you wanted, and you can't do more. You can't go on vacation anymore, you can't attend big family events anymore, and everything that involves going out and doing things feels way too exhausting. So, the only comfortable thing to do is sit at home, watch TV, and talk to people who visit you. It is nice, but after a couple of months or even years, it's the same thing every day, and you realize there won't be any more than that, and it's going to be less and less every day. Getting up is a little more exhausting every day, and so is talking and doing anything. So, death isn't too bad at this point. Story 7. Very glad I will die one day. Hell would be living forever. Your friends and family all die, and you get old, ill, and weak. An off switch would be ideal. Story 8. My father knew when he was going to die and told us on his last day here. We all told him to hush and not say that, but he was right. Very calm and ready. We weren't. Story 9. For the same reasons you stop playing a game, once you've done everything you could and most of your friends and loved ones aren't there anymore, you get tired. It's even worse because the console is becoming obsolete and slow, with bugs for no reason. You can't play something else. It's the only game you've got. It's some kind of relief that the suffering will end. As for what comes next, what will be, will be. Story 10. Why let it scare you? There is literally nothing you can do to completely avoid it. It is an eventuality that all of us are actually equal in. It is basically the goal of every life. It is as much a natural part of the world as breathing, the wind, and rain, and oceans. Story 11. I've read from hospice workers that 9 out of 10 people pass peacefully. They lose their appetite and thirst, and often they'll report seeing animals or other people that are not there. Then they quietly close their eyes and eventually stop breathing. The other 1 out of 10 are helped along with drugs. Ultimately, we're all staring down the barrel of the same fate. Story 12. Well, to start with, at 74, I've seen and known a lot of people who have died: parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, brothers, sisters, friends, and my own wife of 41 years. Add numerous strangers, including some seen in war. I once had to be resuscitated after a drowning. In Vietnam, I was injured so badly they didn't have hope for me. Fortunately, they did not give up, so here I am today. I later had cancer that the doctors thought would kill me, and it almost did. And there is a long list of almosts. Accidents, the bullet missed, and so forth. So I'm not looking at death for the first time. I've seen it a lot. Somewhere along the line, fear of it went away. Not anxious to die, but not afraid of it. Even when I actively think of it, it doesn't bother me. I think the word acceptance fits here. Story 13. 22 years as a firefighter paramedic. I have seen a lot of death. I don't fear it. It's all part of the cycle. What I fear is getting put in a low-rent senior care facility. Story 14. Not everyone copes with it as well as you think. I just recently lost my father. His health declined pretty rapidly. "I'm not even an old man yet," he said with tears a few days before passing after the doctor gave him the bad news. He was 74. Broke my heart. Story 15. I'm only 25, but I think I have a valid perspective on death due to my situation. I've lost my brother at 22 and my dad at 23. To me, death isn't forever gone. It's the gateway to the next level. And I don't know for sure, but I think there is something after death. Being that 2 of my immediate family members are already there. I don't fear death, but rather look at it as an opportunity to reconnect with my lost family and friends. Granted, I have no proof that there is an afterlife. The thought of one is what makes me comfortable with death. Story 16. My dad suffered for several years with bones, including his spine, breaking and collapsing. His legs were the size of your wrists, but he was overweight because he couldn't get around well anymore. Then he got cancer. He died from kidney failure and congestive heart failure. There are worse things than death. I would have considered ending my life, but he made my brother take his guns so he wouldn't. I'm assuming he did it for us. Story 17. I am afraid of the process. How much will it hurt? Will anyone comfort me? On the other hand, I have worked my whole career in environmental care, struggling and sweating for every small step forward. I see it all being undone in the next 8 years or so. That feels worse than the thought of not being here. It feels like I was never here, never mattered, my existence erased while I am still alive. Obviously, it's sad and scary for me, but the world keeps turning. It's a gift to see how the world looks. And maybe now, I am not so afraid of what comes after death. Still scared of the dying part, though. Story 18. I came across this quote somewhere a few weeks ago and just had to save it. I thought it explained death in such a beautiful way. I hope death is like being carried to your bedroom when you were a child and fell asleep on the couch during a family party. I hope you can hear the laughter from the next room. Story 19. I'm 68 and starting to think more about it. The worst thing about it is either my wife or myself will be left behind. Suffering the loss is worse than passing. Passing is part of living. Enjoy the life you have, it goes by fast. Story 20. Death is not suffering. It is just a lack of life. Once you have done most of what you wanted to do, why would you be scared of death, since you are not missing any opportunities? And it is not like you are conscious when you are dead. It is literally just sleep without dreaming. Story 21. I am not scared of death. If I live as long as my father, I have 23 years left, and that is fine. I just do not want to die in pain. Death itself does not scare me. Story 22. Just visited the granny-in-law. She's just turned 96. She's at the point where we think she is actively trying to die. Her mind is still sharp, but her body is just terrible, and she hates being trapped in it. She must have decided around 6 months ago to stop eating. She doesn't leave her room, and she doesn't even turn the television on or listen to the radio. She's just content sitting there, thinking, not eating much and slowly getting weaker and weaker, but she's happy about it all. She always says, hopefully, I will pass away this week so you guys can get your weekends back. It's really hard to see someone you love behave like that. If she ate, got up, walked around, which she can do with a walker, talked to people and stimulated her brain, she would be fine. She just thinks her time should be up, and that's that, I guess. Sorry about the rant. I have been thinking about this for a while. Story 23. I think as I have gotten older, I have just seen and done so much it just does not really bother me anymore. After years and years of working and all the nonsense that happens in this life, it is kind of like whatever. Story 24. I do not fear death. I had been dead for billions and billions of years before I was born and had not suffered the slightest inconvenience from it. Mark Twain. Story 25. I feel this is really an issue for people who have no control over their current lives and are likely a complete mess in the head. Anyone who is one with themselves understands that life moves on a day-to-day basis, and you can only change your course of actions for yourself on a day-to-day basis. People who are stuck in the past or concerned about the future decades away are likely not focusing on themselves in the present. And at that point, are you even living to begin with? Story 26. That sounds young. Because living in fear is not a way to live. And also because there's no point in fearing the inevitable. Death will happen eventually. Also, consider the alternative to live forever. At best, it's the epitome of egotism. To refuse to give way. To demand more than anyone else gets. No, I will not get out of the ride. This is my seat. We all get our turn and we leave, and to quote Streetlight Manifesto, and you can't just get in line again. At worst, it's a special kind of torture. How many broken hearts and sad goodbyes would it take before you yourself break? Look at the rest of the comment section, and you'd know most people would answer a single lifetime of them is already plenty. Don't get it the wrong way, life is good. It's just also as bad. Scales shift from case to case, but the finality is what defines it. Consider this as a fact. No matter how bad life gets, you should still never give up, because it can always improve. But if you end it, then the finality will end it and any chances of improvement become impossible. So again, that life has an end is what allows it to have meaning. That was a bit sour, let's try a metaphor. Imagine an oil painting, except it has no borders. It just goes on and on forever in all directions. Now define that painting in a few words. What is it? Oh, it's infinite. Which means nothing, just that it goes on forever. Oh, but it displays this and that means this, which makes me feel that, yes, it's an infinite painting, it contains all that and more, and it also infinitely repeats itself and also contradicts itself also infinitely, so in its infinite scale, what you notice on it means nothing at all. Now, any random painting confined to its frame and focused on what it means and what the artist wanted to express on it. Shaped not only by what it is, but also by what it isn't. It is just so much more. So yes, do not fear death. Accept it, embrace it, and make the most of the points between then and there. That's exactly what they're here for, opportunity and circumstances provided by causality for you to make the most of it. So please do so. Sorry if that was a bit too agnostic, but it's not the kind of question we can filter out our own perceptions from. Story 27. Do not fear death. Use the knowledge of your own imminent death as a source of life. In the face of our own mortality, everything becomes more alive. Every moment is worth living. There are studies showing that the happiest part of life is when we are older. Perhaps for most, the thoughts of death are not an all-consuming pain but a liberating fact helping many to enjoy what they have. For me, not being old but not young either, I think along the lines of we will all die but we have no idea how long we have left. A true blessing. An 80-year-old often has more time left than a 20-year-old. There is no knowing, no certainty, no fairness. But the fact and thought are liberating in their truth. Story 28. I am in my mid-20s, so I am not old, but death is not something I am really afraid of. I just try to do my best each day and be content with that. I ask if I bettered myself today, was I a good friend, do I like who I am becoming, and so on. If I were to die today, I would like to think I have used the time I have had to make an impact on those in my life, and they would speak well of me. Story 29. Not to state the obvious, but religion or spiritual faith helps. If you believe in an afterlife and you believe it to be positive, your parents have passed, your kids are grown, it's the most natural thing in life. What's the fear? I don't fear death, but I do fear the consequences that will land on my family from an early death. I also fear a painful death. I believe death after a life lived should be welcomed as a positive thing, the next chapter. Story 30. I wasn't in pain before I existed, and I won't be afterward either. I do fear the loss of those I love, and I am deeply affected by grief, but I cannot change the inevitable. I fear losing my loved ones more than I fear losing myself. And I know how selfish that is. Story 31. On the one hand, it kind of sucks that at some point there will be no more experiences. On the other hand, I had zero experiences for billions of years before I came to exist, and that was okay, so I expect another few billion years of non-existence will also be okay. I'm an expert at not existing, and so are you. But anyway, most people aren't losing their minds because we just don't think about it. Is this going to happen? Sure, but it's not happening now. I'll deal with death when it's imminent.